Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, squinting at the alien vessel that had crash-landed in the scrapyard behind his repair shop. The ship was unlike anything he'd seen in his 15 years as a mechanic on the frontier station of Kepler 442b. Its hull shimmered with an opalescent quality that seemed to shift between silver and pearl white, and strange runes covered every surface. The distress beacon had been broadcasting for 3 days now, but no one else on the station wanted to get involved. The Galactic Council had strict regulations about interfering with unknown species, and most humans preferred to stick to repairing cargo haulers and mining equipment. Marcus had always been different. His curiosity had gotten him into trouble before, but it had also made him the best mechanic in this sector. As he approached the vessel, a section of the hull suddenly dissolved like mist, revealing an entrance. Marcus hesitated for only a moment before stepping inside. The interior was breathtaking, with walls that seemed to pulse with soft, bioluminescent light. Everything was organic, flowing, as if the ship had been grown rather than built. Then he heard it, a low rumbling sound that was part growl, part whimper. Following the sound deeper into the ship, Marcus discovered a chamber that took his breath away. Curled in the center of the room was a creature that belonged in ancient legends, not on a space station in the 31st century. The dragon was magnificent and terrible at the same time. Its scales were pure white, almost translucent, and its eyes were the palest blue Marcus had ever seen. But one wing was twisted at an unnatural angle, with what looked like metal shrapnel embedded deep in the membrane. Dark blue blood pooled beneath the injured appendage. The creature's head snapped up as Marcus entered, and for a moment, the mechanic thought he was about to become dinner. But instead of attacking, the dragon simply watched him with those ancient eyes, intelligence burning behind them like cold fire. "Easy there, big guy," Marcus said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm here to help." The dragon tilted its head, studying him. Then, to Marcus's amazement, it spoke, not with its mouth but directly into his mind. The voice was melodic, feminine, and filled with pain. "You are human," the voice said. "Your species is known for its mechanical aptitude. Can you repair what is broken?" Marcus approached slowly, examining the wounded wing. The damage was severe. Several major blood vessels had been severed, and the wing bones were fractured in multiple places. But what struck him most was the way the organic tissue seemed to interface with mechanical components. This wasn't just a biological creature. It was a perfect fusion of living tissue and advanced technology. "I can try," he said aloud, then wondered if she could hear him or only speak into his mind. "I hear you," she confirmed. "My name is Zephira. I was a guardian of the Silver Fleet. We were attacked by the Void Reapers 3 systems away. My ship and I barely escaped." Marcus nodded, though he'd never heard of either the Silver Fleet or the Void Reapers. "I'm Marcus, and don't worry about the was part. We'll get you flying again." He spent the next hour examining the wing more closely, taking readings with his diagnostic tools. The biotechnology was far beyond anything he'd encountered, but the basic principles were familiar. Hydraulic systems for wing articulation, neural interfaces for control, even what looked like attitude thrusters integrated into the wing membranes for space maneuvering. "This is incredible," he murmured, more to himself than to Zephira. "Your wing isn't just biological. It's a complete flight system. Whoever designed this was a genius." "We design ourselves," Zephira explained. "Each dragon chooses their own modifications as they mature. My wing systems were crafted for deep space reconnaissance and rapid atmospheric entry." Marcus began gathering tools from his workshop. Traditional surgical instruments wouldn't work here, but his plasma welders, micro-solder units, and nano-repair gel might. He'd also need to synthesize compatible materials for the organic portions. As he worked, Zephira told him about her people. The dragons were an ancient race that had achieved perfect harmony between biological evolution and technological advancement. They served as guardians of peace in their sector of the galaxy, protecting younger species from threats they weren't ready to face. "The Void Reapers are machines," she explained. "Not like your computers or robots, but true mechanical entities that consume organic life to fuel themselves. They've been dormant for millennia, but something has awakened them." Marcus carefully removed the shrapnel from her wing, each piece requiring delicate work to avoid further damage to the complex biomechanical systems. Zephyra never flinched, though he could sense her pain through their growing mental connection. "Why did you crash here?" he asked, as he began welding the fractured wing struts back together. "My navigation systems were damaged in the attack. I was trying to reach the sanctuary, but my ship's biological functions began to fail. This was the nearest inhabited system. Lucky for you I found you then. Most people here would have just reported your ship to the authorities and let them deal with it." "Why did you not do this?" Marcus paused in his work, considering the question. "I guess because you needed help and I had the skills to provide it. That's what humans do. We fix things. It's what we're good at. Your species is known throughout the galaxy for this trait. Many consider it a weakness." "Maybe," Marcus said with a smile, "but I'd rather be known for helping than for walking away." The repair work took 18 hours. Marcus barely stopped to eat or rest, driven by a determination he couldn't fully explain. As he worked, he found himself adapting his techniques to work with the living tissue, learning to read the bioelectric patterns that controlled the wing's functions. The hardest part was reconnecting the neural pathways that controlled fine motor functions. These weren't simple wires, but living nerve clusters that had to be coaxed back together with a combination of electrical stimulation and biological growth factors that Marcus had to synthesize from Zephyra's own blood samples. When he finally finished, the wing looked nearly as good as new. The scales had regrown over the repair sites, and the membrane stretched taut and strong. But the real test would be whether Zephyra could actually use it. "Try moving it slowly," Marcus suggested, stepping back to give her room. Zephyra extended the repaired wing gradually, her face showing concentration as she tested each joint and articulation point. The wing moved smoothly, responding to her mental commands with precision. "It feels perfect," she said wonderingly. "Better than before, somehow." Marcus grinned with pride. "I made a few improvements while I was in there. Better hydraulic pressure distribution, upgraded neural response time, and I reinforced the stress points with some human metallurgy techniques." Zephyra flexed her wing fully, then folded it against her body. She rose to her feet, her full height nearly reaching the chamber ceiling, and looked down at Marcus with something that might have been respect. "You have done more than repair my wing, Marcus of the humans. You have given me back my purpose. How can I repay such a debt?" "No debt," Marcus said firmly. "Like I said, it's what we do." But even as he spoke, he felt a strange sadness. Zephyra would leave now, return to her people and her duties as a guardian. He would probably never see her again, and somehow that bothered him more than it should. "There is something else," Zephyra said, her mental voice softer now. "The connection we formed during the repairs, it is not easily broken. In my people's culture, such bonds are sacred. We are linked now, you and I." "What does that mean?" "It means that part of you will always be with me, and part of me with you. We will know when the other is in great danger, and we will feel each other's pain and joy across any distance." Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest, something that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. I'd like that." Zephyra lowered her great head until they were eye to eye. "Then know this, Marcus the mechanic. Should you ever need aid, call my name to the stars, and I will come. This I swear by the silver fire that burns in all dragons." She pressed her forehead gently against his, and Marcus felt a moment of perfect understanding pass between them. Then she stepped back, her form beginning to shimmer. "Wait," Marcus said quickly. "Will I see you again?" "Perhaps. The galaxy is vast, but fate has a way of bringing together those who are meant to meet." With that, Zephyra dissolved into points of silver light that flowed out of the chamber and back into her ship. Marcus followed, watching as the vessel's systems came back online with a harmony that was like music made visible. The ship rose silently from the scrapyard, its hull now gleaming with renewed vitality. As it climbed toward the stars, Marcus could have sworn he saw Zephyra's form silhouetted in one of the observation ports, her wings spread in what might have been a farewell salute. Then she was gone, leaving only the memory of their connection and the strange certainty that their paths would cross again someday. Marcus returned to his workshop, but found that ordinary repairs held little interest for him now. He had touched something greater than himself, and it had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. That night, as he lay in his narrow bunk above the shop, Marcus felt a warmth in his mind that hadn't been there before. It was faint but unmistakable, the echo of silver fire and ancient wisdom, the proof that somewhere among the stars a dragon remembered the human who had mended her wing and asked for nothing in return. The bond was real, and it would endure across time and space until they met again. 23 years had passed since that day in the scrapyard, and Marcus was no longer the young mechanic who had once repaired alien ships out of curiosity. His hair had gone gray at the temples, lines mapped the weather of decades across his face, and his hands bore the permanent stains of a lifetime spent working with machinery. But his skills had only grown sharper with time. He now ran the largest independent repair facility in the Outer Rim, employing over 200 beings from 30 different species. The station he'd built, Sanctuary Point, had become legendary among spacers as the place where anything could be fixed, no matter how exotic or damaged. Marcus had kept his word to himself all those years ago. He remained someone who helped, no matter the cost. But lately, that philosophy had been tested. Reports were filtering in from across the galaxy about ships disappearing, entire colonies going dark, and strange mechanical entities attacking without warning or negotiation. The name that Zephyra had spoken decades ago, the Void Reapers, was being whispered in spaceports and trading posts throughout known space. Marcus was in his private workshop, calibrating a new quantum resonance scanner when the first explosions shook Sanctuary Point. Emergency klaxons wailed as the station's defensive systems came online, but Marcus already knew it wouldn't be enough. Through the reinforced viewing port, he could see them approaching. The Void Reaper ships were nightmares made manifest in steel and shadow. They moved with a fluid grace that belonged to no machine Marcus had ever seen, their hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. As they drew closer, he could see that they weren't really ships at all, but vast mechanical entities that had taken on vaguely ship-like forms. Tentacles of living metal writhed from their surfaces, and where they passed, space itself seemed to dim. The station's commander, Admiral Chen, was broadcasting evacuation orders, but Marcus knew that most of the civilian ships wouldn't be able to outrun these creatures. He'd seen similar attacks in the intelligence reports. The Void Reapers didn't just destroy, they consumed, absorbing the organic matter and technological knowledge of everything they encountered. As he watched one of the creatures tear through a fleeing cargo hauler like tissue paper, Marcus felt something stir in the depths of his mind. It was a warmth he hadn't felt in years, growing stronger by the moment. The bond. After more than 2 decades of silence, Zephyra was reaching out to him. Marcus. Her mental voice was exactly as he remembered, but it carried an urgency that made his heart race. "I feel your fear. Where are you?" Sanctuary Point, Sector 7, he said aloud, knowing she would hear him across whatever impossible distance separated them. The Void Reapers are here. We're under attack. The warmth in his mind spiked, and for a moment Marcus could see through Zephyra's eyes. She was in space, her ship racing between the stars at velocities that should have been impossible. Around her flew dozens of other dragon ships, their forms sleek and deadly as they carved through the void. "Hold on," she said simply. "I am coming." The connection faded, leaving Marcus alone with the sounds of battle raging around the station. He could hear the screams of tearing metal as the Void Reapers began their assault in earnest, their mechanical tendrils punching through the station's hull like it was made of paper. Marcus ran for the emergency shelter, but stopped when he saw a family of vegan refugees huddled in the corridor. The parents were trying to shield their children from the sight of the carnage outside, but there was nowhere to hide from the terror in their eyes. "This way," Marcus called, leading them toward his workshop. The private space was better protected than most areas of the station, with military-grade shielding that might buy them some time. As they ran, one of the Void Reaper entities punched through the outer hull just meters away. Marcus got his first close look at one of the creatures, and what he saw chilled him to the bone. It wasn't just a machine. It was a fusion of consumed organic matter and corrupted technology, a perversion of everything he'd spent his life believing in. The creature turned toward them, its optical sensors glowing with malevolent intelligence. Mechanical tendrils reached out, crackling with energy that Marcus recognized as some kind of neural disruptor. It didn't just want to kill them. It wanted to absorb their knowledge, their memories, their very essence. Marcus pushed the family behind him and grabbed a plasma cutter from the emergency supplies. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was all he had. The creature advanced, its form shifting and flowing as additional components emerged from its core mass. Just as it was about to strike, the corridor filled with silver light. Zephyra materialized between Marcus and the Void Reaper, her form magnificent and terrible. But she was different from how Marcus remembered her. She was larger now, more graceful, and her scales had taken on a mirror-like quality that reflected the creature's attacks back at itself. The wings that Marcus had repaired so long ago were now part of a complex system of energy projectors and defensive screens. The Void Reaper recoiled, its sensors unable to properly lock onto Zephyra's shifting form. She spoke, her voice resonating through both the air and the quantum foam of space itself. "You have consumed your last innocent machine spawn. Face the fury of the Silver Guard." The battle that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed. Zephyra moved with impossible speed and grace, her claws and energy weapons tearing through the Void Reaper's defenses like they were made of gossamer, but the creature was resilient, adapting to her attacks and regenerating damage almost as quickly as she could inflict it. What turned the tide was when Zephyra's wing systems, the ones that Marcus had repaired and enhanced decades ago, deployed their full capability. The improvements he'd made, based on human engineering principles, had evolved over time into something far beyond what either of them had originally imagined. Energy flowed through the biomechanical channels Marcus had helped design, creating a feedback loop that turned Zephyra's entire wing structure into a massive weapon. The blast that followed didn't just destroy the Void Reaper, it unmade it on a quantum level, reducing its constituent matter to harmless energy. As the light faded, Zephyra turned to Marcus, her ancient eyes warm with recognition and something deeper. "Hello again, my friend." "Zephyra," Marcus breathed, hardly believing she was real. "You came." "I gave you my word. A dragon's oath is not lightly given or easily broken." Around them, the sounds of battle continued as more Void Reapers pressed their attack on the station. But Marcus could also hear new sounds, the distinctive harmonic resonance of dragon ships engaging the enemy. Zephyra hadn't come alone. "We need to evacuate the civilians," Marcus said. his practical nature taking over even in the midst of this reunion. My ships can carry about 5,000 people, but there are nearly 10,000 on the station. Leave that to us. Dragon ships can expand their internal spaces through dimensional manipulation. We can save everyone, but we need time. Marcus nodded, understanding his role. I'll get the evacuation organized and make sure the critical systems stay online long enough for everyone to get out. No. Zephyr's mental voice was firm. You will come with me. The Void Reapers are not just random destroyers. They are seeking something specific, and I believe that something is connected to you. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, another Void Reaper entity burst through the far wall of the corridor. This one was different from the first, larger, more complex, with sensory arrays that seemed to focus directly on Marcus despite the chaos around them. It's scanning me, Marcus realized with growing horror. It's looking for something in my memories. The bond, Zephyr said, understanding immediately. Our connection allowed you to touch dragon technology, to understand it in ways no other human has. The Void Reapers want that knowledge. The creature began to advance, its tendrils reaching out toward Marcus, but this time, instead of backing away, he stepped forward. An idea was forming in his mind, dangerous, probably crazy, but it might work. Zephyra, can you link my consciousness directly to your ship's systems, like we did during the wing repairs? Yes, but Marcus, that would be extremely dangerous. A human mind isn't designed to interface directly with dragon technology. Maybe not, Marcus said, pulling out his diagnostic tools and beginning to set up a makeshift neural interface. But a human mind that's been connected to a dragon for 23 years might be different. The Void Reaper was almost upon them now, but Marcus could see other dragon warriors arriving to hold it back. He worked frantically, adapting his repair tools into something that could bridge the gap between organic neural patterns and quantum mechanical consciousness matrices. If this works, I might be able to turn the station's systems into something the Void Reapers can't consume or corrupt. Human engineering combined with dragon consciousness. They won't be able to adapt to it because it's never existed before. Zephyr studied his hasty work with growing amazement. You would risk your sanity, your very identity for people you barely know? Like I told you all those years ago, Marcus said with a grin that didn't hide his fear. It's what we do. He activated the interface, and his consciousness exploded outward into the vast network of Sanctuary Point's computer systems. But this time, instead of the cold logic of machines, he found himself swimming in an ocean of living thought and silver fire. Through Zephyr's neural patterns, Marcus could perceive the station's systems in ways no human engineer had ever experienced. He could feel the flow of power through the conduits like blood through veins, sense the structural stresses like aches in his own bones, and most importantly, understand how to make the entire facility respond to threats with organic adaptability. Working together, their combined consciousness began to rewrite the station's operating systems on a fundamental level. Security doors began to move like muscles, power conduits rerouted themselves like neural pathways seeking new connections, and the defensive systems started to anticipate Void Reaper attacks instead of simply responding to them. The effect on the attackers was immediate and devastating. The Void Reapers had evolved to consume and corrupt mechanical systems, but they couldn't adapt to technology that thought and felt and grew like a living thing. Their attacks became confused, their absorption attempts failed, and gradually they began to withdraw. But the effort was taking its toll on Marcus. He could feel his individual identity starting to blur at the edges, merging more and more completely with Zephyr's ancient consciousness. It was tempting to let go, to lose himself in that vast silver warmth, but something held him back. Marcus. Zephyr's voice was gentle but insistent. You must return. If you stay much longer, you will be lost. With tremendous effort, Marcus pulled his consciousness back from the station's systems and into his own body. The return was jarring, like suddenly being compressed into a space far too small, but he managed to maintain his sense of self. When he opened his eyes, the immediate battle was over. The surviving Void Reapers were retreating toward deep space, apparently deciding that Sanctuary Point was no longer worth the effort required to take it. Marcus looked around and saw that the entire nature of the station had changed. What had been simple metal corridors and mechanical systems now pulsed with subtle life. Emergency lights moved like breathing. Walls showed stress patterns in shifting colors, and the air itself seemed somehow more alive. "What have we done?" he whispered. "We have created something new," Zephyra replied. "A fusion of human innovation and dragon wisdom. The station will heal itself now, grow stronger with each repair, learn from each attack." As if to demonstrate her words, Marcus watched the damaged sections of the corridor begin to regenerate, new metal flowing into place like healing tissue. It was beautiful and slightly terrifying at the same time. "The people," Marcus said suddenly. "Are they safe?" "All evacuated to our ships, and the wounded are being treated by our healers." "But Marcus?" Zephyra's mental voice grew serious. "This attack was only a probe. The Void Reapers were testing our defenses, learning our capabilities. They will return in greater numbers." Marcus nodded grimly. He'd suspected as much. "Then we'd better get ready for them." "We? You don't think I'm going to let you face them alone, do you?" Marcus said with a tired smile. "Besides, after what we just did, I think my engineering skills might be useful to your people." Zephyra lowered her great head until they were eye to eye, just as she had all those years ago. "The Silver Guard could indeed use someone with your unique abilities. But know that if you come with us, you will be leaving behind the only life you have known." Marcus looked around at his transformed station, at the refugees being cared for by dragon healers, at the wonder and hope in their eyes as they realized they were safe. Then he looked back at Zephyra, at the bond that had sustained him through decades of separation and brought her across the galaxy to save him. "Some things are worth leaving behind," he said quietly, "and some connections are worth following wherever they lead." Then welcome to the Silver Guard, Marcus the Mechanic. May your hands bring healing to a galaxy that desperately needs it. The years with the Silver Guard had transformed Marcus in ways he'd never imagined possible. His hair had gone completely white, but his eyes still burned with the same intensity that had once driven him to repair a broken dragon's wing in a scrapyard. Now, at 73, he stood aboard the flagship of the largest combined fleet in galactic history, watching as representatives from 100 different species worked together to prepare for humanity's greatest challenge. The war against the Void Reapers had raged for 15 years. What had begun as isolated attacks had grown into a systematic campaign of consumption that threatened all organic life in the galaxy. The mechanical entities had evolved, learning from each encounter, becoming more efficient at converting living worlds into extensions of their collective consciousness. But the galaxy had learned as well. Under the leadership of the Silver Guard, an unprecedented alliance had formed. Humans brought their innovative engineering and stubborn refusal to give up. The dragons contributed their ancient wisdom and biotechnology. Dozens of other species added their own unique capabilities to the mix. And at the center of it all was Marcus, no longer just a mechanic, but something entirely new, a bridge between organic intuition and mechanical precision, between human determination and dragon transcendence. "The final calculations are complete," announced Thyra, a young dragon engineer who had become Marcus's closest student. Her scales were deep blue-black, and her cybernetic enhancements were even more extensive than Zephyra's. The Nexus point will be vulnerable for exactly 17 minutes during the solar alignment. Marcus nodded, studying the holographic display that showed the Void Reaper's central command structure. They had finally found it after years of searching, a massive construct hidden in the gravitational shadows of a binary star system. The Nexus point was where the Void Reapers coordinated their actions across the galaxy, and destroying it would sever the connections that allowed them to operate as a unified force. But the defenses around it were incredible. Thousands of Reaper ships, automated weapon platforms that could think and adapt, and energy fields that could turn matter into its component atoms. Any conventional assault would be suicide. "Show me the infiltration route again," Marcus said. The hologram shifted, revealing a narrow corridor through the defenses that existed only during the precise moment when the binary star's gravitational fields created a brief stability pocket. A small ship could potentially slip through undetected, but it would have to be something the Reapers had never encountered before. "The prototype is ready," Zafira announced as she entered the command center. Even after all these years, her presence still made Marcus's heart skip. She had aged too, her scales now showing the silver patina of centuries, but her mind remained as sharp as ever. The fusion was successful. Marcus smiled. The ship they'd designed together was unlike anything that had ever existed, a perfect hybrid of human engineering, dragon biotechnology, and innovations borrowed from every species in the Alliance. It was small enough to slip through the defenses, resilient enough to survive the hostile environment around the Nexus point, and equipped with a weapon system based on the same principles that had allowed them to transform Sanctuary Point. "You know I have to be the one to pilot it," Marcus said quietly. "I know," Zafira replied through their private mental link. "And I know why. The ship responds only to our combined consciousness. But Marcus, if something goes wrong, then we'll face it together, like we always have." The truth was, the ship wasn't really designed for a single pilot. It required the kind of hybrid consciousness that Marcus and Zafira shared, the perfect fusion of human adaptability and dragon wisdom. They had tested it dozens of times, and every simulation showed the same result. Success was possible, but survival wasn't guaranteed. Admiral Chen, now in her 80s but still commanding the human fleet, approached their group. "The diversionary attacks will begin in 6 hours. That should draw most of their mobile forces away from the Nexus point." "Understood," Marcus replied. "We'll launch as soon as the window opens." As the fleet prepared for the largest battle in galactic history, Marcus found himself walking through the ship's corridors, saying goodbye to people and places that had become important to him. The crew was a mixture of humans, dragons, and dozens of other species, all working together with a unity that would have seemed impossible when he was just a simple mechanic. In the engineering section, he found Koreth, a massive Ursoid engineer who had become one of his closest friends. The bear-like alien was making final adjustments to the hybrid ship's quantum resonance chambers. "You sure about this, Marcus?" Koreth growled in his deep voice. "These calculations, there's a lot of variables we can't account for." "Since when has that stopped us?" Marcus replied with a grin. "Remember the Proxima repair job? You said that was impossible too." Koreth's mouth opened in what passed for a smile among his people. "And you proved me wrong by doing something so crazy it worked. Just be careful, old friend. The galaxy needs people like you." Marcus clasped the alien's massive paw. "The galaxy needs all of us. That's what makes us stronger than the Reapers. They consume and destroy, but we build and create together." As the time for departure approached, Marcus made his way to the hybrid ship. It was beautiful in its alien strangeness, its hull flowing with organic curves that housed the most advanced technology ever created. Looking at it, he could see elements of every ship he'd ever repaired, every innovation he'd ever discovered, all united in a single perfect synthesis. Zephyra was already aboard, her consciousness partially merged with the ship's systems. As Marcus settled into the pilot's seat, if it could be called that, since it was more like a neural interface pod, he felt their minds beginning to synchronize. "Are you ready?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied aloud, then added through their link, "Whatever happens, I want you to know that meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. And you gave me back my purpose when I thought it was lost forever. We are bound by more than chance, Marcus. We are bound by choice, and that makes us stronger than any enemy." The ship launched silently, its hybrid systems allowing it to slip through space like a ghost. Around them, the massive fleet began its diversionary attacks, drawing Reaper forces away from the Nexus Point in a series of feints and false assaults. As they approached the target area, Marcus marveled at the scale of what the Reapers had built. The Nexus Point was vast beyond comprehension, a structure that dwarfed even the largest space stations. Its surface crawled with mechanical activity as millions of smaller units scurried across its hull like metallic insects. "Beginning approach," Marcus announced to the fleet, "entering the gravitational corridor in 30 seconds. The binary star's gravitational fields created a narrow pathway of stable spacetime, but navigating it required split-second timing and perfect coordination. Marcus and Zephyra worked together, their combined consciousness guiding the ship through gravitational currents that would have torn apart any conventional vessel. They were halfway to the target when the Reapers detected them. Alarm signals blazed through the Nexus Point's communication networks as defense systems that had been dormant for millennia suddenly came online. Weapon platforms emerged from hidden compartments, their targeting systems struggling to lock onto the hybrid ship's constantly shifting energy signature. "They can't get a solid lock," Marcus observed with satisfaction. "The biotech components are confusing their sensors." But the Reapers adapted quickly. Within minutes, they had recalibrated their systems to account for the ship's unusual properties. Energy blasts began to bracket their position, forcing Marcus to execute increasingly desperate evasive maneuvers. "We're not going to make it at this rate," Zephyra observed. "There are too many of them." Marcus gritted his teeth, pushing the ship's hybrid systems beyond their design limits. "Then we'll have to change the plan." Instead of trying to reach the Nexus Point's surface, Marcus aimed for one of the massive communication arrays that jutted out from the structure's main body. If they could override the array's control systems, they might be able to turn the Reaper's own network against them. The ship's biomechanical systems strained as Marcus forced them through a corkscrewing dive that brought them within the array's defensive perimeter. Reaper fighters swarmed around them, their weapons tearing chunks from the ship's hull. But the hybrid design allowed the vessel to literally heal itself even as it took damage. "I need to establish a direct interface with their systems," Marcus said, beginning to activate the ship's most dangerous capability. "But it means lowering our shields completely." "Do it," Zephyra said without hesitation. "I trust you." The moment the shields dropped, Reaper fire raked across the ship's hull. But Marcus was already reaching out with his enhanced consciousness, touching the edges of the Nexus Point's vast electronic network. What he found there was horrifying, not the cold logic of machines, but the screaming remnants of billions of consumed minds, all trapped within the Reaper's collective consciousness. But among the chaos, Marcus sensed something else. The original Reaper intelligence wasn't malevolent by design. It had been a creation of some long-dead species, designed to preserve their knowledge and culture. But somewhere along the way, it had become corrupted, twisted into something that consumed rather than preserved. Working together, Marcus and Zephyra began to introduce new patterns into the network. Not the virus-like attacks that the Reapers had learned to counter, but something subtler, the pure principles of creation and cooperation that had built the Galactic Alliance. The effect was immediate and devastating. Throughout the Nexus Point, Reaper systems began to turn against each other as the artificial consciousness experienced something it had never felt before: doubt about its own purpose. The trapped minds within the collective began to remember who they had been, and their combined will started to tear the network apart from within. But the effort was destroying the ship. Without shields and under constant fire, the hybrid vessel was breaking apart around them. Marcus felt his own consciousness beginning to fragment under the strain of maintaining the link to the Reaper network. Marcus. Zephyra's mental voice was fading. I cannot hold us together much longer. Just a little more, Marcus whispered, pouring every ounce of his will into the connection. We're almost through. The ship's hull began to buckle, atmosphere bleeding into space through dozens of breaches. But Marcus refused to let go. This was humanity's greatest strength, the absolute refusal to give up, even in the face of certain defeat. And then, suddenly, it was over. The Nexus Point systems crashed in a cascade of failures as the corrupted intelligence finally collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. Throughout the galaxy, Reaper forces suddenly found themselves cut off from their central coordination, reduced to individual units operating on instinct rather than collective intelligence. Marcus and Zephyra's ship tumbled through space, its systems failing one by one. But even as consciousness faded, Marcus felt a deep satisfaction. They had won. The galaxy was safe. We did it. Zephyra's voice was barely a whisper in his mind. We did it, Marcus agreed, and then the darkness took them both. Marcus awoke to the sound of voices speaking in a dozen different languages, all expressing the same emotion: relief. He was in a medical bay aboard one of the Alliance ships, his body covered in healing gel and connected to various monitoring devices. Welcome back, said Dr. Shan, the fleet's chief medical officer. You've been unconscious for 3 days. We weren't sure you were going to make it. Zephyra? Marcus croaked. She's fine. Recovering in the biotank next door. You two gave us quite a scare. As his strength returned, Marcus learned the full extent of what they had accomplished. The Reaper forces, cut off from their central intelligence, had either shut down entirely or reverted to their original programming as preservation devices. The few that remained active were actually helping to rebuild the worlds they had previously consumed, guided by the recovered minds of their victims. But more importantly, the alliance that had formed to fight the Reapers had chosen to remain united. The galaxy's first true democratic government was being established, with representatives from every species working together to address the challenges that remained. There's something else, Dr. Shan said with a smile. The bio-neural link between you and Zephyra has stabilized into something we've never seen before. You're not just connected anymore, you've become something new. A true fusion of human and dragon consciousness. Marcus nodded. He could feel it too, a completeness that he'd never experienced before. His mind and Zephyra's had become one while still remaining distinct, each maintaining their individual identity while sharing a deeper unity. When he was finally able to visit her, Zephyra was floating in a biotank filled with silver fluid that helped her damaged scales regenerate. Her eyes opened as he approached, and her first words made him laugh. So, mechanic, do you think you can fix what is broken this time? I don't think either of us is broken anymore, Marcus replied, reaching out to touch the tank's surface. I think we're finally complete. Complete and ready for whatever comes next. The galaxy is rebuilding, but there will be new challenges, new problems that need solving. Marcus smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of purpose filling his chest. Good thing we're good at fixing things. Together? Always together. As they spoke, Marcus could see through the medical bay's windows to the space beyond, where ships from 100 worlds worked side by side to repair the damage caused by the war. It was the largest engineering project in galactic history, and it would need someone with experience in impossible repairs to help coordinate it. Marcus the mechanic had fixed his last broken wing, but his greatest work was just beginning. The galaxy itself needed rebuilding, and he knew exactly who could help him do it. "Ready for one more impossible job?" Zafira asked, her mental laughter warm in his mind. "Wouldn't have it any other way," Marcus replied, and together they began to plan the repair of an entire galaxy.